If you're watching this, you're likely a fan of PlayStation content. And look, we get it. Our constant bashing of Phil Spencer, Xbox, and their poorest decisions gives you comfort in your choice. Meaning, Xbox sucks. And I made the right decisions in ignoring them this generation or whenever, according to these guys. Now, as we may sympathize with that sentiment, something else can be true as well. And that thing is, PlayStation leadership has made some very bonehead moves as of late. And trust me, I'm not one of those, the whole industry is in trouble talking heads, right? But from pricing to closing the gap on PC release dates and panic purchases, it's easy to say that the last few years at PlayStation's helm, while definitely being on top, haven't been the best decision-making wise. And then there's the handling of Concord and the closure of Firewalk Studios, which is a massive eye-opener in a distinct way. Now, what way is that? Well, we'll tackle all this on the next installment of The Spiel, our gaming hot topic video series. Buckle up and get ready for a good one. Because man, oh man, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. What's up, people? It's your boy MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, MM2K Gaming, back again with another video. This one is called Concord Shows PlayStation Valuable Lessons Regarding Live Service Games. But before we get into all this, do us a huge favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and rock those bells for notifications, please, so you know when we're dropping these doses. All right. So we got to understand how we got here, right? And then we got to understand what the story is too. So let's do that. And then I'm going to give you my argument on what should be done instead over at PlayStation. And then we're going to get to our conclusion on Sony learning their lessons, hopefully, on live service interaction. Because what sparked this is we did a poll during a recent podcast that tackles this and other subject matters. And again, at the end of this, there will be a card that you could select to go check out that podcast if you want to see what we have to say in further discussion with the panel in regards to this. But we asked the gamers, like, why, like, what do you want Sony to do now that they've closed down Firewalk and Concord has been an abysmal failure? What do you want them to do? Do you want them to continue live service and do better? Or do you want them to just give it up altogether, just stick to their brand faithful? We're going to get into the results of that poll in a little bit, but first, let's do this. Let's talk about the story that is in front of us right now, and that is this. This is courtesy of GameIndustry.biz. It says Sony shuts down Neon Koi, which was their mobile company that didn't release anything yet, and Firewalk Studios. In an update to Sony employees, Herman Holz, CEO of Studio Business Group Sony Interactive Entertainment, said that after evaluating our gaming's portfolio and status of our projects to ensure we are meeting near and long-term business priorities, it was making the difficult decision to close Neon Koi and Firewalk Studios. Says for Firewalk, Holz said that Sony had spent considerable time these past few months exploring all of our options. It has determined that the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. So whether I think that was the best move or not, that's such a long piece to gnaw on, and that was better discussed in our podcast. So definitely check out our podcast when that link pops up. That being said, I want to talk about how we got here, because again, in relation to the poll that we did during that podcast, a lot of people said, no, stop with this games as a service stuff. It's not doing you any good. Go back to your bread and butter, which is live service games. Not live service games, which is single player games. I want to show you why that despite the majority of the people in our poll feeling that way, I don't necessarily think it's that easy for Sony. Let me show you something. This, now again, this is not a 1v1 match, but this is like a data collection site for users on PlayStation, right? And what it does is it gives a great snapshot of what are the top played games on PlayStation via their marketplace, right? And again, in discussing this during the podcast, Cold Blood had mentioned that, hey, this site has some certain parameters around it to where the data isn't a 1v1 match. And that is true. It's not a 1v1 match, but when you compare it to the most played list on PlayStation, this is eerily compatible for something that we can't rely on. So whoever set this data site up, they got some pretty good parameters, because when I look at the different stores, a lot of this matches up, right? And the common theme that you can see, whether you're looking at this or you're looking at what is on like the top played or the top paid for in the PlayStation stores, is that here, I'll just go through it with you. Let's go through the list here. Top 20, Fortnite, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, EA Sports, FC, Roblox, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, Grand Theft Auto, Minecraft, Overwatch 2, Rocket League, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Dead by Daylight, NBA 2K25, Apex Legends, Genshin Impact, Red Dead Redemption 2, EA Sports 24, Rust Console Edition, Destiny 2, Metaphor ReFantazio, Valorant. Round off the top 20. And look, this is a little bit behind the curve because we know that Black Ops 6, by the time of this recording, has released. That would be up there too. So what does this mean? This means that for the overwhelming majority, I want to say like 80+%, if I'm just doing some rough numbers, is games as a service. All right, 80% of this is games as a service. Of the titles that are games as a service, 2 or 3 that are listed here, which are Overwatch. I guess you consider Minecraft something like that, right? Overwatch, Minecraft, and Call of Duty. And really technically 4, because we know Black Ops 6 is going to be up here too. 4 out of roughly like 16 titles on here at least belong to Microsoft, which is technically still their competitor, not so much as a big threat competitor, but technically still. So 4 of these titles are owned by their competitors. Only 1 is owned by them, which is Destiny 2. So here's what you can't forget, my friends. There's a reason why we're here where Sony is really thinking of games as a service. And I'm not a games as a service person. I mean, I like Division 2. I like PvE, games as a service games or whatever. I'm not a PvP type person. You know what I'm saying? I like it's not necessarily like games as a service. I like open world games, right? So none of these that are in this top 20, opposite of none of these games as a service games in the top 20, really none of them. None of them tantalize me at all. I've played Destiny 1 in the past. We've really been big on Destiny 1. Could never really get into Destiny 2. You know what I'm saying? But that's here nor there. All right. So you're not talking to someone that sympathizes with games as a service approach. I'm not going to play these games, even if Sony pursues them and they're successful in them. Right. I mean, I did like Helldivers 2 for the time that it, really felt invigorating. But I'm not really a games as a service type of person in this fashion for these mainstream casual games as a service games. But again, top 20 is riddled with them. Sony only owns 1 of them that are up here. Okay. 4 of them are owned by their quote unquote competitor. So if you see where, and this is where we're going to get into how we got here, how Sony felt like they had to make this push, and why I can understand the move that they made. If you look here, you remember this? Probably don't, because you guys have short-term memory, man. You guys can only think in the first 5 minutes and out. Like, I got another video popping up about like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and how players are being reported. Like all the communities are doing this. I have short-term memory. Players are being reported, and even though there's some great numbers, launch numbers behind Black Ops 6, people are like, yeah, this is the sales everywhere for Black Ops 6 have been maximized. The data that's been shown hasn't shown that. It's up 60% on PlayStation. It's up a percentage on Steam, but on Xbox, there's no proof that sales haven't been cannibalized by Game Pass, and we don't know if that cannibalization is going to lead to a systemic Game Pass that's doing great in the long term. Why? Because we crunched the numbers, we did the math. You would have to be subscribed to Game Pass for 5 months in order for that to be the case. So just like I told people with Starfield, it's too early to tell, and they didn't believe me, and now Starfield is looked at a different light than it was at launch. The same thing could possibly happen with Black Ops 6 on Xbox if Game Pass subscribers aren't sustained. So you guys in all communities, you have a hard time looking at it the first 5 minutes of now. So you guys forgot this that I have on the screen right now, right? You forgot this. What's this? Sony lost $20 billion in market valuation after Microsoft just announced the ABK deal. For those of you that don't understand how business works and don't understand what that means the value of their stock went down by $20 billion just as something was being referenced. And if you weren't following the rebound since then, it took Sony 2 years to get that value back. 2 years. So of course, if you have a competitor that's really trying to gouge the industry and fleece the industry of these type of games that make up your store, you better have better control over what predominates in your store. So again, this is not something that Sony can ignore. I understand that, all right? And I completely understand. Here, let's go through the timeline real quick. They lost $20 billion in evaluation, right? Jim Ryan, who first thought that, hey, look, Xbox ain't trying to do nothing with this. They're going third party. They're not trying to buck with us. Was found out real quick that originally Phil did. Phil was trying to buck with him. This is part of the email that was in the FTC trial where Jim Ryan is trying to get certain assurances from Microsoft, and they're like, we're not giving you any assurances beyond a couple years from now that these games will remain on your platform. Like Phil was trying to play hardball and make this stuff exclusive. That then led Jim Ryan to panic because he originally told the board at Sony, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Phil ain't going to do that. I know what this guy's up to. To now completely being proven wrong, it caused him to panic. What did he do? That happened. This email is in August of 2022. In August of 2023, this dude buys the aforementioned Firewalk, an unproven studio that just got this one game under its helm that is still developing. Then, the following month, they go in and let everybody know that they secured investment. They got a whole bunch of money. They borrowed a whole bunch of money to do more live service stuff. But then the ABK deal closed. We know what happens. Microsoft realized we can't go exclusive with this stuff because Phil cannot lead us into any successful avenue under an exclusive strategy. He's failed miserably, and we're not going to keep writing them blind checks to fail. So we're going to go more to a publishing front, and where we're going to, we're going to do the best to come to you, the consumer, instead of trying to have you come to us, right? So now that the concerns and the fears are pretty much died down, Sony then in turn says, okay, well, we're still going to pursue games as a service, but we're not going to pursue it that hard. We're moving back a little bit. We're not in panic mode anymore. Where Herman Hulst sent out a letter back in February announcing that, right? So that's the super quick version of the history, the TLDR of the history, as it relates to what happened with Sony and why they were in such a panic over Concord. I mean, and getting Concord and Firewalk Studios and buying Bungie and Fair Games and all that other stuff, right? And again, it's an understandable approach because, yeah, the games that predominate your store, the top 20 games, the games that are bringing you the swath of the money that you're making, aren't games that you control. Not good. when you got Microsoft out here with this humongous war chest looking to fleece the gaming community. So let's get a better control of it. And I applaud them realizing that maybe they got to scale it back, but they still got to pay back the money that they borrowed. For one, and for two, I don't think it's something that they can completely drop, because after these 10-year deals are done, who's to say what Microsoft may try again? You never know. You never know. They might get rid of Phil Spencer, finally get somebody in more competent that can compete, and they might give it another go. You never know. That being said, this is where Sony messed up. Even though approaching studios and working with them and securing money, that's all understandable. Here's where they messed up. Number one, they attempted to change their existing studios into games as a service provider. Number two, they bought studios like Firewalk without the studios proving themselves, and made, as reports indicate, huge financial commitments behind those purchases. And then lastly, especially when we talk about Concord, they've adopted a poor business model and a rollout cadence for these knockoff games that they bought in sheer panic of ABK. Here's what Sony should be doing instead. Like, secure the money, make the deals to try to make some games, and then this is what you do. Well, here's what you don't do. First and foremost, you don't convert your single-player studios to do full games and service work. Sony in 2022 created this Center for Live Service Excellence group, and they completely failed here with Concord. But now, since then, they've extrapolated some of the higher talent over at Bungie and have co-opted them into this place. Like, you really got to utilize this place to plan the execution and rollout of these games. And there should be separate studios, separate efforts, separate manpower to cover these efforts. You do not take Studio Ben and turn them into a live service studio, just like how you were going to turn Naughty Dog into a live service studio. You don't do that. If you secured money to make these games, then you got to secure enough money as well to help fund other hands getting into this. Like doing second party deals with IP that you may own to create these games, I think puts less burden on you and actually puts a bigger sense of urgency on the studio, because they're going to be clawing and fighting to be in your good graces, opposed to just being owned by Sony, and it is what it is. Helldivers 2 is a prime example. You had the blueprint in front of you, Sony. What the hell were you doing anything else but this? But I digress. Let's continue on. Don't buy games and service studios outright. To me, that's insane. What are you doing? You do not do that. You do not buy games as a service studios outright when they haven't proven themselves. All projects should start as second party titles where Sony owns the IP, and only contemplate purchase after there's been a huge success. Like, I can see them buying the studio behind Helldivers 2. That would make sense. Keep them working on Helldivers 2. But a studio that's not proven, it should not be bought yet. And lastly, games as a service releases should not cannibalize the AAA game release schedule. Like, when you were looking at 2024, in no shape, form, or fashion should you have said, okay, our end of the year release or close to or during the holiday season release is going to be Concord. No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Something else should have been pushed out or rolled back or whatever. I don't know how well you could have worked with Square Enix to push back Final Fantasy VII Remake, Stellar Blade, something. You don't do that. Your AAA story narrative game releases should not be cannibalized by these, I think Concord should release. I think all these efforts should release the first quarter of the year where things are slower, where they're more likely to succeed, like Helldivers 2. So I just don't know, man. I don't know what the thought process was, but this was a major faux pas by Sony. So in closing, here's what I think. I totally understand the desire to create their own games as a service titles. Makes perfect sense. I mean, Microsoft as it currently stands owns 3 big titles that make up PlayStation's top 20. Call of Duty, Overwatch, and what was that, Minecraft? I think it's fair to throw Minecraft in the mix too. Games as a service dominates their top 20 consistently, and none are owned by Sony except for Destiny 2. This has to change, but it can't change overnight and without care. Sony must leverage the live service center of excellence. This will ensure that they will continue to deliver great games their brand is known for, while expanding in more popular areas of their marketplace to secure their longevity. This cannot be an either or situation. You have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And it takes great leadership to steer this transition into the right path. And in saying that, I'm speaking directly to Hiroki Totoki and Herman Hulse. Listen, you guys better get it together and become better acclimated to your actual consumer base and build a better respect for the culture. Mr. Totoki, that last part was specifically for you. Else, go hit up your old homie, Jim Ryan. Start asking for some great vacation spots, because surely Sony will make sure you're available to enjoy them. And with that said, that's it from your boy. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, because like I always say, here's what I think. But if you did like what I had to say, check out the links below to follow me. Again, on Legion to Hard Knock Digital Culture, Paul Dosich, MM2K Gaming. And again, if you want to hear the larger discussion, check out the link to your left right now. It'll take you to that podcast. It was a hell of a podcast. You definitely don't want to miss it. With that said, peace. Have a wonderful, wonderful gaming day.